All right, so I want to go ahead and get started. And again, thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar, which is entitled Healthy and Lasting Weight Loss. Now, um, just as some background before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. I know I recognize some of the names that I see here on the list of attendees, and then there's a whole bunch of new people that I know I've never met before or addressed before. So I just want to give you a quick background. My name is Brian Sanderoff. I am a traditionally trained pharmacist. In fact, I used to own two pharmacies in downtown Baltimore once upon a time. And after I had been in my stores for a while, I wanted to evaluate how I was really helping my patients, or even if I was really helping my patients. And so what I did is I took a look at one particular population, and that was my blood pressure patients, my patients that had high blood pressure that were getting medicines from me for their high blood pressure. And I asked what I thought at the time was sort of a simple question, not realizing how revealing it would become when I got the answer. And that question was, am I really helping these people? Can they stop taking their medicines for high blood pressure? And I was kind of surprised to find out that the answer was no. And in fact, over the 10 years that I had been in my store at that time, what I noticed was is that people needed to take higher dosages and more medicines to continue to control their blood pressure. And that really made me raise my eyebrows and say, okay, well, how am I helping people here? And so what I found out is that in medicine for the chronic diseases, the diseases of aging, in giving medicines, we're not really making those problems go away. We're just sort of turning the volume down on what the body is saying. And so here's the analogy that I usually use. If you're driving around in your car and you see that little red oil light on the dashboard illuminate, well, you have a couple choices. You can take the car to the mechanic and find out what's wrong and get it fixed. Or if you want, you can just take a piece of black tape and put it over the light and you don't see it anymore. Well, for all of the diseases of aging, that's what we do in medicine. We just give you medicines that turn the volume down. And your body, in its wisdom, will turn the volume back up and say, no, no, you're not listening to me. See, that's what happens with the blood pressure. So you have an elevated blood pressure, you take a medicine that sort of artificially lowers the blood pressure, and the body says, no, no, you're not listening to me, and it makes the blood pressure go up again. And then you need a higher dose and another medicine to be able to control it. So that made me really start to look at health from a different perspective and to try to understand what's really going on in the body. And so I've come up with this sort of concept that is that the number one killer in this country is not cancer, it's not cardiovascular disease. The number one killer is misinformation, is not understanding the ramifications of your decisions. And so the bulk of my work these days is about helping to educate people about the true ramifications of their decisions. And then if they want a different result, they can make different decisions. And so if you go to the website, wellbeinggps.com, you'll see all sorts of articles and copies of other webinars and all sorts of information, some content to help us learn how to do things properly. And today's topic about weight loss is one of those issues where there is a lot of misinformation out there. And so hopefully I'm going to dispel those myths for you. I'm going to give you some nuggets. I'm going to give you the rules to follow that I can guarantee will help you lose weight, and maybe more importantly, lose fat, which is not maybe, more importantly. And so we'll get into that. And again, if you have questions, just type them right in to the question box there. And as soon as it shows up on my screen, I will answer that for you. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Healthy and lasting weight loss. And so the first thing I want to tell you is that diets don't work. And many people have had that experience already. And the reason is because if you go on a diet, inherently that means that at some point you're going to go off of that diet. And that is not going to be helpful for you. What really would be helpful is to learn to have a new relationship with your food. That really is the key to lasting weight management or body composition control. I also want to sort of illustrate what the difference is between weight loss and fat loss, because the truth is, as far as your health goes, it really doesn't matter what you weigh. Now, I know in medicine and our government likes to talk about the body mass index, BMI. And basically what that is saying for a certain height, you shouldn't be more than a certain weight. And that's how we determine whether someone is normal weight, overweight, obese, morbidly obese. But that idea does not take into account the fact that there's different body compositions. So according to the BMI, somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger is not just fat, it's not just overweight, he's morbidly obese. And that's because he is so muscled, and muscle weighs much more than fat does. So according to his height, he weighs much more than he should. And that really is a completely useless designation. It really doesn't matter how much you weigh. It's your percent body fat that is a key indicator that will speak to quality of life, avoiding diseases as you go along in your life, and longevity, how long you live. And so that's really what we want to talk about is weight normalization. Really doesn't matter how much you weigh, it's your percent body fat. Now, the truth is that many of us have percent body fats that are much too high. And we know that. And so that BMI for many of us seems to be fairly valid because most of us aren't walking around with Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of bodies. All right, so loss of muscle mass is the number one marker of aging. As we go along, there's actually a medical term for this, and it's called sarcopenia. And so as it turns out that as we age, it's actually our own muscle mass that gets broken down into amino acids that the body uses for other purposes, like digestive enzymes, like your immune factors, like brain chemicals. And so it turns out that if you look at this little chart here, you will see that declining health starts in the 40s or 50s, and that coordinates with loss of muscle mass. And if we maintain our muscle mass, our quality of life and our progression of disability and disease goes much slower. And so we'll talk about this a little bit more in the exercise area, but it's really important to understand that you need to maintain your muscles, and it becomes more and more important as you get older. So one of the keys to understanding body composition is to look at how your body handles sugar. Now, there are many of us that are walking around that do not handle sugar very efficiently. And there's a lot of names that go with that. It's known as insulin resistance. It's sometimes called metabolic syndrome or syndrome X, even pre-diabetes these days. The pre-diabetes ones makes me laugh because that was just a sort of a thing that medicine did to kind of make a reason to give people more prescription medicines. It increased the population of a quote unquote sick population so that it's reasonable to start writing prescription. The truth is that every single one of us is pre-diabetic. Every single one of us has the potential to be diabetic based on our genes and our diet and our exercise or lack of exercise. But all four of these terms, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, syndrome X, prediabetes, pretty much mean the same thing. And what it means is that your body is not handling sugar very efficiently. So you eat something, and a component of that something breaks down into simple sugar, which then gets absorbed into your bloodstream. And that is a signal to your pancreas to kick out insulin. And insulin's job is to basically go to a door, a cell, and knock on it and say, hey, let this sugar in. And insulin resistance, or all of these other terms, is when insulin knocks on the cell and the cell ignores the knock. Now, your body stores sugar in a couple of different forms. The first place that it wants to store sugar is in a ready form of energy called glycogen. And this happens in your muscles and it happens in your liver. Once the glycogen stores are filled up, then your body will want to take that sugar and store it for a longer acting or a longer storage unit of energy, and we call that fat. And so when you get insulin resistance, the first cells that become resistant to insulin doing its jobs are the liver and then the muscle. And so what happens is you don't have as much stored ready use energy, and your body will not waste that energy. Your body, genetically speaking, remembers when there was famine, when there was no food available, And your body has a limitless ability to store energy for tomorrow. And again, we call that fat. And so with insulin resistance, what happens is we don't use sugar as readily, and we have a tendency to store it for tomorrow more readily, and that increases our percent body fat. And that is the enemy of longevity and health as we get older. So what are the hallmarks or the general features of metabolic syndrome? Well, abdominal obesity, altered blood lipids. So we're talking about elevated triglycerides. We're talking about low HDL, which is the good cholesterol. And we're talking about elevated small particle LDL, which is the bad cholesterol. Blood pressure can be elevated. Again, insulin resistance, and that can be measured with a blood test called a fasting insulin. Tendency towards inappropriate blood clotting and increased inflammation. And understand that inflammation is one of those underpinnings of every one of the chronic diseases that we're trying to avoid as we get older. All right, so then that begs the question, how are we supposed to eat? And this is really, really important. And it comes from, the answer, the proper answer, comes from looking back at history. We really have to understand our past and how we developed genetically as a species to be able to answer that question appropriately. So the question is, how did we used to eat? So we have been on this planet as a species for a long time. And for the vast majority of that time, we ate a very specific way. And that's what and that's how we grew up genetically, meaning that our genetics changed or altered to be able to thrive under very specific conditions. And until relatively recently, we ate a very specific way. Got a question coming in from Caitlin here. It says, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I know. Sorry, Caitlin's saying that the capacity for the webinar, we hit our limit. And unfortunately, we did. We tried to let everybody know to try to get here early. So Caitlin, just tell people that this will be recorded so that, and we'll make that available so that people that weren't able to get on live can still watch it. Sorry about that. All right, so back to that story of the history. Again, we ate a very specific way, and genetically speaking, that's how we grew up. And until relatively recently, that's what we did, and then we made a change. And that change happened sort of at the beginning of what we call modern agriculture, where all of a sudden we started eating foods that caused our blood sugar to rise very, very quickly. So rules for proper eating, if you want to normalize your weight and especially your fat, is number one, you have to eat low glycemic foods. And this is really, really important. And again, this goes to what we used to do and what we've done as a species for, literally hundreds of thousands of years. So what is the glycemic index of a food? It is the property of how quickly a food will raise your blood sugar. It's not that a food has a lot of sugar in it, but specifically that it will help raise the blood sugar quickly. And so if you were to eat something that was, say, grain-based, that will always cause a quick spike in your blood sugar. And obviously, if you eat cakes and candies and donuts, you know that. But even a 12-grain whole wheat piece of bread will cause a sugar spike. And this is the change that we made in our diet relatively recently. We started having grains as a staple in our diet. And for the vast majority of time that we've been here, we have not had grains as a staple in our diet. Now, there's another term that's called the glycemic load. And that sort of takes the glycemic index and then makes it more practical for us because it talks about the density of a food. And so, for instance, if you were to look up the glycemic index of watermelon, you would find that it has a fairly high glycemic index, meaning that it has a fair amount of sugar in it. But when you look at the glycemic load, you will see that it actually has a moderate to low glycemic load. And that's because for you to get too much sugar from a watermelon, you have to eat the whole watermelon. It's not a very dense food. Whereas if you look at grains, they have high glycemic index and high glycemic loads because they're kind of dense. And so the reason this is important to avoid is because of what we call the vicious cookie cycle. And here's what happens. And this is sort of the cycle, or what happens. So over here on the left, you have an intake of a high glycemic index food, and what that causes is a sugar spike. And that sugar spike causes an insulin spike. Now, understand that again, genetically, until very recently, we were not exposed to foods that could cause the blood sugar to go up so quickly. And when it does, the body says, wait a second, I don't know what's going on here, but it's going to keep happening. And so the body overproduces insulin. And when the body overproduces insulin, then your blood sugar level drops lower than it should. And that also increases fat storage. When that happens, your body says, uh-oh, I need more sugar, and you have increased hunger, and you have increased cravings for high glycemic index foods, which then start the cycle all over again. It's called the vicious cookie cycle. I also want to show you, that's my little rendition of a sumo wrestler there. And I like to talk about the sumo wrestler diet as an example of what not to do. Now, if you are familiar with sumo wrestling at all, then you will know that sumo wrestlers have to be a certain weight. It's a minimum. So they do things to make themselves heavier and fatter. And so here's what a sumo wrestler does. He starves himself all day long, then he eats a huge pasta meal, and then he goes right to bed. And so if you want to look like a sumo wrestler, that's what you should do. Starve yourself all day long, then eat a huge carbohydrate-laden meal, and then go right to sleep. That's how you'll pack on that weight. Most of us don't want to be sumo wrestlers. We want to be just the opposite. So rule number one is you have to avoid high glycemic foods. If you want to do a Google search and look for the glycemic index or the glycemic loads of foods, you can do that and get a whole list. For the glycemic load, you want your foods to be a 9 or an 8 on that scale at a maximum. Okay, so number one, eat low glycemic index foods. Number two, you have to eat something within 45 minutes of waking up. And the reason is because if you get up in the morning and you start moving around and you don't eat something, the message that you're sending your body is that there's no food available. And again, going back to caveman times, your body has very keen mechanisms to deal with starvation. And those mechanisms are decreased metabolism, meaning that you're going to slow the use of energy, and increased fat storage, meaning that you're going to store as much energy as you can. Now, that's the opposite of what we want. So if you wake up and you start moving around and you eat something, the message that you sent your body is that there's food available. And the body's response is going to be, okay, I can burn more calories and I don't need as much stored energy. It's really important to understand that. I have a question that came in that says, I thought it's supposed to be 1 hour. Within 45 minutes of waking up is the general rule of thumb that we want it to be. If it ends up being an hour, it ends up being an hour. But for most of us, we hit the bricks running and there's activity. If you're one of those people that wakes up slowly and you wake up and then you're in bed for another 15 or 20 minutes, maybe hitting the alarm or whatever, an hour is probably fine. Another question coming in, what would be the best to eat within that 45 minutes? Good question, and I'm going to show you exactly what I think the optimal day's eating will be. So I'll answer that for you in a second. Will coffee or a breakfast shake work? Coffee, no. Breakfast shake, yes, and I will address that as well. Question here as well, if I exercise first thing in the morning, should I eat before I exercise? Absolutely. If you are a morning exerciser, even more important to have something that says to your body, you've got some food available, because you get up, you exercise, and you haven't eaten anything, body shoots into starvation mode. And many people that I work with get frustrated because they exercise and they're not losing weight, not losing fat the way they think they should. And oftentimes, this is the reason why, because they wake up in the morning and they think, all right, I can't have something on my stomach when I exercise, or it's uncomfortable. And they sort of set their body up for, that starvation thing. All right, and then let's see, one more question. I also read that drinking water is supposed to have the same effect as eating. Is that correct? No, it's not really. Now, drinking water is very, very important when you're losing weight, because one of the purposes of fat cells is to store toxins. And so as you lose fat cells, you lose some toxins, and you have to get a way to get rid of them. But we're talking about calories here, not just filling up your stomach. What about drinking lemon water first thing in the morning? Also fine, helps with cleansing, but is not meeting the need of telling your body that there's food available. Wow, good questions. I like all that. Okay, so the effects of starvation is slower metabolism and increased fat storage. That's the opposite of what we want. So rule number 1, eat glycemic foods. Rule number 2, eat something within 45 minutes of waking up. And rule number 3, you have got to eat something every 2.5 to 3 hours during the day. And it's for the same reason. So let's say you're good about that breakfast thing. You get up, you have a little breakfast, you go, you work out, you go to work, you don't eat anything for 4 hours. When you eat something, the body remembers when there was no food available. And it says, wait a second, I'm going to need energy for tomorrow. And so it's going to slow metabolism and store more fat. And so it's really important. Now, that 2.5 to 3 hours doesn't have to be a meal each time. It could be a snack, it could be something small. And so, and I'm about to go through for you what would be to me, the typical day's eating or an ideal's eating. How do we know the glycemic index, or how can we compare the glycemic index and load between different food choices? Best thing to do is go onto Google and just do a search for glycemic index / glycemic load of foods, and you'll find the whole list there. And then you can just print one out, and then you can have them there. But you'll see some things, and you'll start to understand that processed and refined carbs, anything that's grain-based, has a higher glycemic index. For many of us, having a piece of 12-grain whole wheat toast for breakfast is just like having a Snickers bar. And I always say, if that's the case, have the Snickers bar, because that's a lot more fun than a 12-grain whole wheat toast, right? So best thing to do is just do a little research on that, and you'll find the list. But you'll find that any animal protein really doesn't have a glycemic index. Someone's asking, what about oatmeal? Again, if you are going to eat oatmeal, then the thing to do is to have the steel cut raw oats, not that's processed, not that has sugar in it, that still has a fairly high glycemic index. And usually when we're first starting to lose weight, I would like to avoid grains completely. And then when you have to add something back, something like that is okay. But it has to be the kind of oatmeal that you hate making, because it takes an hour to clean out the pot afterwards. None of that stuff that comes in a little envelope. All right. So here is the perfect day's eating, according to me anyways. So you wake up, let's say you wake up at 6:15. For breakfast, you have a 2-egg omelet with vegetables, and you can have any sort of veggie you want. It doesn't matter. Tomatoes, asparagus, peppers, onion, mushrooms, all that kind of stuff. Green leafy vegetables, really good. About 2.5 hours later, you have some sort of snack. That can be a handful of nuts. It can be a half of a protein bar. It can be a protein shake. It could be a low glycemic or a low sugar yogurt if you like that. Anything like that is fine. Lunch, right at noon, some sort of salad with a protein on it. And the protein needs to be, some tuna or some chicken or some salmon or some beef, whatever. Mid-afternoon, again, a snack, half of an apple or piece of pear, some vegetables and hummus, anything like that. Dinner, 5 o'clock, protein and veggies. And then if you need something in the evening, and a lot of us get used to eating foods in the evening, try to make it straight protein. Now, there's some variations to this. The truth is that someone had asked about a protein shake. That is a great, convenient way for us to have breakfast, especially us that work, that are in the working world, and, we've got kids or whatever. And so the time in the morning isn't what we would like it to be. The other thing that you can do for breakfast, and it's really funny because people always ask me about, what else can I eat for breakfast, because I don't want to eat eggs all the time. Well, if you look out the window, you will not see any other animal in the entire animal kingdom that eats one kind of food at one time of day and different kinds of food at the other time of the day. I think it was sort of probably General Mills that kind of convinced us that we're supposed to have breakfast foods for breakfast. And the truth is, anything you would eat for lunch and dinner is fair game for breakfast as well. And for those of us that have busy lifestyles, especially in the morning, a good thing to do is whatever you're making for dinner, make extra. Your breakfast is all ready for you, whatever it is. And so you just heat it up and you're ready to go, whether that's soup, salad, dinner, protein, whatever. All right, getting some questions here. What kind of dressings would you recommend for the salads? You want to, and this is an interesting point, and this is really important. You have heard me talk for a half an hour now, and I haven't mentioned fat as a bad thing one time. And that's because we do not get fat from fat in our diet. We get fat from sugar in our diet. And so any sort of dressing is fine as long as it doesn't have sugars in it. The worst kind of sugar that I see in salad dressings, in prepared salad dressings, is high fructose corn syrup. That's like poison for all of us. And one of the key reasons why we have such a problem with obesity in this country. And so look at your salad dressings and look at the ingredients. I like to make, at home, we make our own and we do it with some, real nice flavored, yuppie balsamic vinegars and some olive oil. And then, sometimes some lemon juice or whatever. You want to look at the sugar content to avoid what's bad for you there. Let's see. What about the timing your protein around your workout? That's a really good question, Elizabeth. I appreciate that, and I am going to address that in a second. Okay, so hang in on there. Let's see. Let's see. Are the protein bars different than a typical trail bar? Yes. You have to look at the sugar content because what you want is a low glycemic protein bar, and many of the bars out there, like Lara bars or whatever, they're grain based or they're dried fruit based, and those really have a high sugar content and a high glycemic index. And so you want a low glycemic index protein bar. There are ones that I use in my practice here, and you guys can get them from us if you can't find them locally. It's made by a company called Metagenics, which is one of the professional companies, and it's called Protein Fusion. And these are really great bars. They give you about 18 or 20 grams of protein. They taste good. They come chocolate or peanut butter, chocolate peanut butter, or cookies and cream. So they taste like you're cheating, but they're sweetened with sugar alcohols, which don't have a glycemic effect. So they taste good, but they don't affect your blood sugar at all. So that's a good one to use. What plant-based proteins do you recommend? That's a good question. I do a lot of work with vegetarians who do not get enough protein. And so there's 2 products that I use or 3 products that we use. One of them is called Food, P-H-O-O-D. And so it's a completely non-soy, non-dairy, non-animal protein shake that gives you about 20 grams of protein plus a good nutritional component to that as well. Or Protein Fusion, which is just the protein part of that. Or there's another one called MediPro Vegan, which is another one that I use a lot with my weight loss patients. So many protein bars are medium to high glycemic. Are there any brands you recommend? Right. So that's the Metagenics one is really a good one. Can you reverse the 5 p.m. and 7 p.m.? Yes, absolutely. Any of these meals can be reversed. It's not really the quantity that you're eating. It's more that you are getting some calories to let your body constantly know that there is food available. Boy, look at all these questions. These are great. What about proteins for vegetarians, vegans? So I addressed that already. Are light salad dressings better to eat versus regular salad dressings? Not necessarily. We are lazy Americans. And if you take the fat out of a dressing, its sugar is going to replace it to give it a certain taste. Or even worse, you're using artificial sweeteners, which aren't good for you either. So no, I don't recommend using light anything or low fat anything. Fat is not the issue here. And it's really interesting because I usually say if you're eating a food that says recommended by the American Heart Association or recommended by American Diabetic Association, it's probably not good for you and you shouldn't eat it. All right. Let's see. So someone's saying, what are examples of foods in the 8 to 9 low glycemic index? There's a million of them. Any animal protein, pretty much any fruit, pretty much any vegetable, as long as you're eating those fruits the way nature provides them. You don't see orange juice growing on a tree. You see oranges growing on a tree. You don't see raisins growing on a vine somewhere. You see grapes growing on a vine. So generally speaking, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, animal proteins. Let's see. This is from Nadia. Last year when I was trying to lose weight, I was doing everything right, but nothing was dropping. A dietitian told me to cut out the nuts. Once I cut the nuts out, I started to drop weight. So fat must have something to do with it, right? Not necessarily, because Nadia, just because you dropped weight does not mean you dropped fat. And that is part of the problem here. We have a lot of people who go on this diet or that diet and they lose 20 pounds, but they actually increased their percent body fat. And that is not good for you. There's such a thing as called skinny fat. Anorexics, you know how they die? Their heart gives out because they don't lose fat, they lose muscle. And there are anorexics who have had a 50% body fat. And so just because you lost weight doesn't necessarily mean that you lost fat. And that's something that should be measured. For our patients here in Baltimore, we measure body composition to make sure that that what you're losing is fat, not muscle. That's really important to understand. Let's see. Someone said, do stevia and agave have the same effects as plain sugar? Agave, yes, it's just sugar from a different source. Stevia, no. Stevia is good. It does not have any glycemic effect whatsoever. So it tastes sweet, but it does not cause a sugar response. And it doesn't do what the artificial sweeteners do, which is either have a problem with your nerves and how your nerves function, or sort of raise the bar on what sweet is. And so I'm a big fan of using stevia if you need to. Problem with stevia is you can't really cook with it. It doesn't really retain its sweet property once it's been heated. Let's see. John is asking, are some nut butters better than others? They're all pretty good as long as you don't have sugar added to it. And so, you can have peanut butter that has a lot of sugar. You can have peanut butter that just has peanuts in it. And it's the same thing for almond or cashew or whatever. And all of them are fine. I guess you could take them to an extreme and get too many calories. But as far as the sugar content goes, that's fine. How late is too late to work, or how late is too late to eat? Okay, so Elizabeth asked that question. I have a feeling Elizabeth's standing next to her boss because her boss wants her to work late tonight, and she thinks it's not healthy for you. That's a hard question to answer, Elizabeth, and the reason is because what we do in our society to get through our society is probably not necessarily what nature intended for us. And so us working 12, 14 hours a day has some negative connotations to it. I'll talk about that in the stress thing in a second. So eating too late, when you go to bed, what your body wants to concentrate on is regeneration and repair. It does not want to work on digestion. And so when you eat within a couple hours of going to bed, you go to bed, digestion's still going on, and then your body can't regenerate and repair, and liver can't concentrate on what it's supposed to do while we're sleeping. So that's why you shouldn't eat too close to bedtime. Let's see, the lists I see on the internet listed most fruits and veggies, etc., at a 15 index. It depends on those fruits, but no, I don't think that's accurate. I can grab my list. I have it somewhere in my office here, and I'll go through that. But I'm not sure that's an accurate list. And so you may be looking at glycemic index instead of glycemic load. Let's see. Morgan says, so many of my friends are on this Advocare kick. Are there such things as good programs, or is that all bogus? I will say that I have seen people be very successful on different sorts of programs, depending on what happens after they get off of the program. And so if it's a program that actually teaches you to understand food and use food differently, then that can be successful. But the reason that the diet industry is as big as it is because it keeps cycling the same people through it and through it. And so people do LA, they do they do Weight Watchers, they do this, they do that, they count points, they weigh their food, and next year they're right back on a different program, and that's because you're not learning to change those habits. Question from Ashok says, how can honey be used instead of sugar? It can. It's funny because if you really look at Paleolithic hunter-gatherers, the only food that they probably had easy semi-regular access to that would cause a spike in blood sugar is honey. But that was really seasonal, and it was a treat. The problem with us is that it becomes a daily treat, and that's when it's an issue. So you can use honey, but you can't use it all that often. What about coconut products? Coconut sugar, coconut flour, coconut oil, etc. Are these high in glycemic index? So the coconut sugar is. I really like coconut flour. It's not really flour. We call it flour, but it's not really flour, and it has a pretty low glycemic load. Coconut oil is great, and that's the oil that I cook with a lot at home. Oh man, look at all these questions. All right, I'm going to keep going with the presentation, and I will get to some of these other questions as we go on. I want to talk a little bit about exercise. And again, the key here is to take a look back in time and see what conditions we grew up in. And we did not grow up under circumstances where we would ever go out and run for 5 or 10 or 15 miles at a same pace. That's not what activity was like for the vast majority of time that as a species we've been here on this planet. What we really did was what we would call interval training. What we call today interval training. What we had was quick bursts of very intense activity separated by longer periods of less activity. That would be how we made up the day as Paleolithic hunter-gatherers. And that's what we have to try to emulate today. Now, obviously, we're not going to go out and hunt down saber-toothed tigers, but we can emulate that sort of activity today. I also want to say a word about muscle building versus aerobic exercise. And so fat burning exercise is important. And it's good for your heart, it's good for your girlish figure, but it's also important to build muscle because, one, the more muscle you have, the more calories you burn sitting around doing nothing. That's called the resting metabolic rate. And so the bigger muscle load you have, the more calories you burn sitting around. And number two, remember that first slide or third slide I showed you, and that is that the number one marker of aging is loss of muscle mass. And we want to make sure that whatever sort of exercise time you have, half of it gets dedicated to aerobic exercises that will raise your heart rate, and half of it gets dedicated to muscle building. I want to go back for a second because I had said, about that we weren't really designed to go out and run for 5 or 10 or 15 miles. You guys, I'm sure you've heard of this thing that's called the runner's high. And what that is, after you've been exercising for a certain period of time, for me, it'll happen when I'm out running for what I used to run 4 or 5 miles, and then you sort of get this boost of energy, and we call it the runner's high. And it's like this kick where all of a sudden the second carburetor feels like the second carburetor opens up and you've got some more energy. Let me tell you what that is really. That's nature's way of preparing you to die. That's what a runner's high is. Because if you go out and you run for 5 or 6 miles without stopping, what you're really telling your body from the outside world is that whatever is chasing you is not stopping, and it's about to catch you. And that burst of endorphins is really just sort of nature's way of saying, okay, well, here's a little boost right before you die. That's what a runner's high is. And it's not what nature intended for us. It's not what we want, really. What we want are quick bursts of intense exercise separated by shorter bursts of less intense exercise. Longer periods of less intense exercise. And so I want you to, when we're done here, you can do a search for something called Peak 8. And this is a really keen program that is great for building muscle, burning fat, and increasing growth hormone levels, which is fat targeting. And so basically, this is a very intense program, interval training, that you can do on any sort of machine you want. You can do it any sort of activity you want. And it takes about 22, 23 minutes, and I don't recommend you do it more than 3 or 4 times a week maximum, because you can sort of burn yourself out as well. And what you do is you warm up for a couple minutes. So let's just say you're on a treadmill as the exercise that you're doing. And again, you can do this on any exercise. Do it on a rowing machine, on a stair stepper. You can just do it out on the gym, out on a track. You can do it dancing, whatever you want. But I'm just going to use the treadmill as the example. So you warm up for 3 minutes or so, and it's good to be able to monitor what your heart rate is as well. And then you kick up the speed and you increase the incline so that you are going literally as hard as you possibly can for 45 seconds. And what's going to happen is your heart rate is going to shoot up to pretty much your maximum, which is fine. And then you're going to slow it down and bring the incline back to normal for a minute and a half. A minute and 15 seconds. So 45 seconds of complete craziness, and then a minute and a half, 15 seconds of calming down. And what happens is your heart rate will come back down a little bit. And then you repeat that 8 times. That's the 8 part of it. And so what happens is within that 22 or 23 minute exercise program, your heart rate goes up and down and up and down. And studies have shown that that's how you increase your growth hormone. That's how you increase your fat burning capacity. And you also make muscle this way. And that's what you want. You do not want to get your heart rate up and keep it at that same level for a long period of time. That's not benefiting you the way you think it is, or the way that we've been taught it is. And this is a good time to talk about, someone had asked about what about eating after you're working out. Really important to understand this. You do an intense workout like Peak 8, you will increase your growth hormone levels, and they will stay elevated for a couple hours after the workout. Now understand, growth hormone is fat targeting. So what I just said was, if you do that 23 or 24-minute exercise, for the next couple of hours, you will continue to burn fat. Really important. There's one thing that will stop that from happening. If you have an insulin spike, that stops growth hormone in its tracks. So if you do a really intense workout and then you drink a Gatorade, which has all that sugar in it, and you get a sugar spike, and then you get an insulin spike, you stopped growth hormone in its tracks. And so after you work out, straight protein. That's all you want to have. You can have something that has some sugar in it at the beginning of the workout to kind of fuel the workout a little bit. But afterwards, straight protein. You do not want to eat anything that causes a sugar spike for a couple hours after working out. Okay, boy, there's a couple of questions here. Let's see. I do 30-second intervals. Does that matter? You want the intense. Usually, it's about a 4-to-1 ratio of relaxation to the intense part. So 30 seconds and then a minute and a half. 30 seconds and then a minute and a half. That's the way to do it. And that 30 seconds, if you're doing this right, by the time you get to that 8th one where where you're doing that intense part, you shouldn't have much left. You should really be to the end. Let's see, here's a question from Gina. She said, my kids really recommend I start using protein powder to build muscle now that I'm over age 50. What's your perspective? I am I'm a protein guy. And depending on, here's what happens. We work out, we exercise. In essence, what we're doing is telling the factory workers to build, but then we don't give them the materials to build. So if you want to build a house and you hire a crew, but then you don't give them nails and boards, they can't build a house for you. That's what many of us do. We are protein poor. And so as a minimum, if you want to build muscle, and again, this is a minimum, if you want to build muscle, you should be having at least a half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're 140 pounds, that means 70, 75 grams of protein minimum. And so I'm a big fan of getting one of those, apps on your iPhone so that you can put in your diet and see what the content and see that you're really not getting as much protein as you think. And also understand that it's not what you eat, it's what you eat and digest. And so if you eat 50 grams of protein, if you go ahead and eat a big 16-ounce New York strip steak, that's a lot of protein, but you're not going to digest and break all of that down into individual amino acids. So it's better to get 20 to 25 grams at a time more often throughout the day. All right, let's see. What about natural sugars like tomatoes in a salad with chicken after a workout? Tomatoes are fine. They don't have a lot of sugar in them, and as long as you're eating the whole tomato or the way nature provided, the sugar that's in there doesn't hit the bloodstream the same way that a candy bar would. And so it's more of a slow release kind of sugar because of the enzymes and the fibers that are in that food. And that's an okay way to go. I probably would avoid the really sweeter fruits, probably avoid the berries a little bit. Not that you can't eat them, but right after you're working out. You don't want to waste the energy and the reason that you did the workout in the first place. Nina is asking, what was the protein ratio? A half a gram of protein per pound of body weight. And so cut your weight in half. That's how many grams of protein. And again, I will emphasize that's a minimum. If you are an athlete and you really want to perform, it can be 1 to 2 grams of protein. A guy like Ray Lewis, that's a guy that's getting 350 to 400 grams of protein every day. Now, he burns calories a lot different than the rest of us do as well. Dennis is asking, so fruit is no good after workout? That is correct. For the most part, I would avoid fruit. Just do a straight protein. Either do a protein shake, and that would be a unflavored whey protein is probably the best way to and most cost-effective way to go. Or you want to do some meat and cheese roll-ups, that kind of thing. What about bananas? Bananas are fairly high sugar, and so that's one I would avoid. I love this question. I have heard that chocolate milk in moderation is good after an intense workout. Is there any truth to that? Who put that together? The chocolate milk people. No, it's not really good for you. There's a protein in there, even though, there's a whey protein. That's a good protein to build. Casein is not a good protein to build muscle. And so they say, oh, yeah, it has protein in it, but those sugars are not good for you. All right, let's stress its effect on our body. This is really important to understand as well. And I know that, we're coming close to the end of our time here. And so I'm going to try to pull through this a little bit quicker. But stress is ultimately a life-preserving phenomenon. our fight or flight response to something that's stressful, again, goes back to caveman days. Saber-toothed tiger jumped in the cave, and certain physiological changes happen that allow us to either run or fight and to live through that encounter. And then the saber-toothed tiger leaves the cave and everything comes down to normal. In our lives, the saber-toothed tiger never leaves the cave, and that's the problem. And so what in the short term is life-preserving physiological changes, in the long term become problems. And these are the physiological changes that happen. Number one, increased blood sugar, because your body figures, all right, I'm going to have some extra work to do to either get out of here and to repair all the damage that get done from that encounter. But long term, we don't want to have that increased blood sugar. Fat around the middle, especially. When we're under chronic stress, the body responds by trying to protect the organs. And that's why we get fat around the middle. And so a hallmark of somebody that is having problems with stress and how they're responding to stress is that, fat around the middle. And I did a webinar about stress. I'm doing one in next month for you guys. And so that's, I think, getting put up on the website today. And so that'll be, what was that? May 13th, I think. Wednesday, May 13th, same time, 2 o'clock, all about stress and stress types and how to respond to stress differently. Okay, so fat around the middle. It has an effect on metabolism. It slows metabolism down, and it affects thyroid function in a negative way, which means you don't burn as many calories. You lose protein when you're under stress, and you have a harder time taking amino acids and turning them into muscle in your body. Your body, under times of stress, does not want to make muscle. And sleep is also really, really important. If you're not sleeping properly, it's tremendously stressful to your body. It's tremendously hard on the adrenals, which causes the making of cortisol, which causes all of these changes to happen. So I would encourage you next month to join me for stress, because I'm going to talk about stress types, and different ways to deal with stress. And I understand that some of you folks out in the working world have stressful jobs. Can't imagine that. All right. Now, supplements can be helpful for this. Now, first of all, I want to tell you, and I hope this gets back to him as well. It's okay to me if any of you are his friends and you tell him that I said this. Dr. Oz is a goofball. He gets on TV and he tells you about all of these magic cures, these simple little pills that you can take that are going to allow you to sit on a couch, eat potato chips, watch TV, probably his show, and lose weight. Excuse me. And none of that is true. There's no magic cure for this, and that's really important. So when it comes to supplements, you're not going to hear me talk about this latest fad or that latest fad. It's simple when it comes to the supplement part of this and what could be helpful in losing weight. So number one are healthy fats. Fish oil is really, really important. And getting your fats in balance is important. There are anti-inflammatory fats and pro-inflammatory fats, and those two things need to be balanced in a very specific way. Again, I did a whole webinar about healthy fats, and I encourage you to go to the website and watch that webinar. It's really interesting. But number one, fish oil helps cells communicate with each other. And when we're talking about your body using sugar more efficiently, nothing is more important than cells talking to each other the way they're supposed to. If you want to reverse insulin resistance, one of the ways to help doing that, other than just getting the sugars out of your diet, is to increase cells talking to each other. That's what fish oil is all about. General multivitamin, general vitamins and minerals, things like chromium, the B vitamins, vitamin D3 plays a really important role in cells communicating with each other and genes expressing themselves in a positive way. I told you that as a species on this planet, we did not grow up under circumstances where we ate foods that caused a sugar spike, meaning that we did not have grains as a staple in our diet. Well, you know what else? We didn't live indoors. We didn't work indoors. And so our vitamin D levels today are woefully low, and we really need to work to get that up. Again, I did a whole webinar on vitamin D. Let's see, Elizabeth's asking a question. I heard too much fish oil is bad for you. Taking a supplement of it will make you have too much, more than one would have normally. So here's the problem. First of all, theoretically that's possible, but it doesn't happen in practice. You would have to go way overboard. And the short story is that, the Reader's Digest condensed version of that is that there are pro and anti-inflammatory fats. And what nature intended for us was to get anywhere from a 1-to-1 to a 2-to-1 ratio of fats that cause inflammation to fats that work against inflammation. Pro to anti-inflammatory, anywhere from 1 to 1 to 2 to 1. What's in the standard American diet? Anywhere from 15 to 30 to 1. And that's because of what we do to our livestock. We basically feed our livestock vegetable oils, corn, and that changes their fat content. And even salmon these days, farm salmon doesn't eat the way it would in nature. It gets fed Purina salmon chow or whatever, and it's changed its fats. And so it's really hard. That's a theoretical possibility, but it doesn't happen in practice. Thanks for that question. Appreciate it. Probiotics, really, really important. It is vital to keep the environment within your gut proper. And there's all sorts of studies showing that when there's an imbalance of the bacteria in your gut, obesity is a result, and increased percent body fat is the result. And so taking a probiotic or good bacteria formula, again, did a whole webinar just on probiotics. And then adaptogens, which are herbs or nutrients that help calm the adrenal response to stress so that the cortisol production goes down, so all of those physiological changes that I talked about a slide or two ago go away. So that's sort of the story for lasting, healthy weight loss, or weight normalization is the best way to think of it. A lot of information here. Sometimes you need some help in applying that to you as an individual, and I would encourage you to reach out. You are welcome to call me at the office, or you're welcome to email me through the website, and I will be happy to help you understand what's going on with you. Bunch of questions coming in, so I'll try to get to them. First of all, let me just tell you that on our archives on the website, a whole bunch of these webinars are recorded. Leaky gut, the Essential Six, getting sleep, cholesterol, osteoporosis, all sorts of things on there. And then also want to point out that next month, Wednesday, May 13th at 2 p.m., we're going to do one about stress, understanding the results and learning strategies to change them. All right. Let's get to some of these questions real fast. What about dairy? I heard people say to stay away from dairy to lose weight. You mentioned meat and cheese roll-ups. I'm not a big fan of dairy. The truth is it's food for cows. It's not food for humans. But as far as weight loss goes, it's much healthier than anything that comes from a grain-based food. And so from that perspective, it's actually healthier for you. Drinking a lot of green tea, is it good or bad for stress or weight loss? Okay, so green tea has some caffeine in it. That's not good for stress because it beats up your adrenals. It sort of gives you a spike in energy, but it lowers the baseline of where you're starting from with that energy. But green tea also has an ingredient in it which is called theanine, which is sort of like the antidote for the caffeine. So green tea is okay. Sometimes what we put in it isn't so great for us, so I would probably try to avoid the sugars and that kind of stuff. Can you give a couple of examples of adaptogens? Yes, there's a bunch of different herbs. Licorice, ginseng are ones you've probably heard of. Ashwagandha, schizandra, Arctic root are ones that you maybe never have heard of. And I use different formulas. And so there's a company called Natura that makes a product called Power Adapt. And it's a group of adaptogens that help with energy and metabolism. So specifically for weight normalization, that's a good one to use. A little bit energizing, and so we don't like to use that too late in the day. Breakfast and lunch is a great way to do that. Let's see. Can you recommend a brand of probiotic? Yes. Okay. So again, I did a whole webinar about this, but the Activia yogurt thing does not have nearly enough bacteria in it. So short answer is Healthy Origins is the company. The product is called Probiotic. It's 30 billion bacteria, multi-strain, shelf-stable, so you don't need to refrigerate it. And it's the most cost-effective one as well. I think we sell 60 of them for $20. And that's the one that I have my patients use with excellent results. An example, please, of an adaptogen. Okay, did that. Can you give an example? Oh, boy. I guess everyone's into the adaptogens. And so I like to use formulas. I don't like to use the individual ones. Holy basil is another one. There's a whole bunch of different ones. And so there are adaptogens that are energizing, and there are adaptogens that are calming. And so next month, when we talk about the stress, I'm going to talk a lot about adaptogens and which formula would be best for you as an individual, because there are these things that are known as stress types. Some people are over responders, some people are under responders. If you give an over responder ginseng, it's going to be like giving them a jolt. If you give an under responder something like maybe holy basil or something that's more calming, it's not going to help them with their wherewithal to respond. And so we'll talk about that a lot in next month's webinar. So please, tune into that one. What was the probiotic? I said Healthy Origins is the company, and the product is called Probiotic. If you go to our website in the store, just punch in probiotic and you'll find that one. And it's a really good one. By the way, if you order anything from us, everything is free shipping. So even though I'm in Baltimore and you're in Boulder or on the West Coast or down in Texas, wherever you're listening, we'll send it to you for free. Oh, that was a commercial, wasn't it? Carbohydrates' role in weight loss. Carbohydrates are important. What I just described to you is a controlled carbohydrate diet, not a low carbohydrate diet, a controlled carbohydrate diet. You will get plenty of carbs eating the way I just told you. You'll get them from vegetables, you'll get them from moderate fruit, you'll get them from nuts and seeds, you'll get them from legumes. And that's the way you should get them. Sarah's saying, how many carbs is too many? That really depends on the individual, and we don't look at numbers. We look at where those carbs are coming from. So it's not how many is okay, it's where those carbs are coming from, and you have to stop getting them from grain-based foods. What about ginger? Nina asked. I'm more of a Mary Ann fan myself, but I understand people like ginger. That was a little joke. Ginger's great. It's an anti-inflammatory, and we use that in a lot of our combined products. Elizabeth says, going back to exercise, how late is too late to work out? Here's the problem. As far as physiologically goes, I don't know that it makes a difference, but what happens is that when you work out too late, it interferes with your ability to calm down and be able to sleep properly. And I've got a patient who has a heavy-duty sleeping issue, and we just couldn't make headway until she finally made the decision to start exercising in the morning instead of the evening, and all of a sudden her sleep improved. And so that's the issue with that. I don't think physiologically, we're designed to exercise in sync with our hormonal system that responds to whether there's light out or not. And so exercising too late in the day or in the evening probably goes against what nature wants for us. We're supposed to be up a little bit before the sun comes up, and we're supposed to be settling down when the sun goes down. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. We had quite a crowd and a lot of questions. I really do appreciate that. I do hope you found it useful. I do hope that you join me next month. We're going to talk about stress, and again, on Wednesday, May 13th, and you'll be able to go to the website and sign up for that webinar sometime soon. Should be by the end of the day, I think. And if not, however you heard about this webinar, you will hear about that one as well. Everybody, really have a great afternoon. I appreciate it. Take care.